All right, welcome back. So we are jumping into 1 Samuel chapter 13, and we jump right into Saul being disobedient. So if we remember from chapter 10, Samuel told Saul to go to Gilgal and he would meet him there and they would make burnt and peace offerings. So we see that 7 days come, and on the seventh day, Saul is like, okay, something is happening. Samuel isn't here. I'm going to go ahead and make these offerings myself. And right after Saul finishes this, Samuel walks up and is like, oh my goodness, what have you done? And Saul is like, look, I waited for you and you didn't come, and I realized we were about to go to battle, but I had not consulted the Lord, so I just went ahead and did it. I forced myself. You can see that he says he forced himself. He forced himself to do something he had no business doing in the first place. So because of this disobedience, Samuel tells Saul, because of what you've done, God is going to remove the kingdom from you and give it to a man after God's own heart. Then we move into chapter 14. So here we see that Jonathan has a battle plan. So he goes up with his armor bearer, and between the two of them, they kill 20 Philistines. And once Saul and the rest of the army realize what's going on, they join them, and the Lord saves Israel in this battle from the Philistines. And then we also see that Saul made an unnecessary oath. He tells all the people in his army, if you eat anything, you're cursed. So because Jonathan was separate from Saul's army, when he catches up to the army, other people in the army see that Jonathan is eating honey, and the people in the army say, hey man, your dad made an oath. He said anybody that eats is cursed. And Jonathan is like, what? Y'all are all weak and distressed because you haven't eaten, but if you see, I just ate this honey and I'm energized. After that, the Israelites go on to conquer the Philistines once again, and because they are starving, after they kill all the men, women, and children, they take the cattle and eat it raw. They kill these animals and eat them raw with the blood. And as we know from reading all the commandments, Israelites are not supposed to consume blood. This is considered unclean. And they do this because of this unnecessary oath that Saul put on them. So they're starving, and because they're so hungry, they see animals and they kill them and just start eating them. Then Saul cast lots, and he cast lots to determine who ate something when they weren't supposed to. He realizes it's his son Jonathan, so he's like, okay, so you have to die. And Jonathan is like, do what you got to do. But the people intercede for Jonathan, and they're like, you can't kill him. He led us in this great victory. You cannot kill Jonathan. So Jonathan's life is spared. And to wrap up the chapter, Saul leads Israel in conquering other nations, Edom, Ammon, a bunch of other enemies. So Saul found out he's no longer king, but it looks like he's trying to go out with a bang. In chapter 15, Samuel comes to Saul and he says, the Lord wants you to destroy and defeat the Amalekites. And God wanted him to do this because of how they treated Israel when Israel came out of Egypt back in Exodus 17. So God did not forget that. And he's like, Saul, go destroy them. I want you to utterly destroy all the men, women, children, cattle, everything needs to be wiped out. So Saul is like, cool, I'm gonna go do this. So he goes, they kill all the men, women, and children, except Saul saves the king. And then he also sees that the people are saving all of the animals that seem to be the best of the best. So Saul has not followed the directions. So God informs Samuel of Saul's disobedience. Samuel is grieved. He goes to confront Saul and he's like, man, what are you doing? I gave you clear instructions. And according to Saul, he thought he followed the directions. He's like, look, I killed everybody. The king is the only one that's left. And look, the people kept the cattle because they wanted to make sacrifices to God. Like, how is that wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. And Saul makes a very clear point in verse 23. So Samuel says, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness as an iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he hath also rejected thee from being king. So this is a very, very huge statement for Samuel to make, because we've seen throughout the generations how strongly God feels about idolatry and witchcraft and all of these things. So for Samuel to say that this rebellion, simply not listening to God and choosing to do what you want to do, is just as bad as committing idolatry. It's just as bad as engaging in witchcraft. And then we also see that in verse 22, Samuel tells Saul to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. So there's a good thing that we can do, but the better thing is to just obey what God wants. So yes, sacrifices, offerings, all of those things are important. So those are good things to do. But what's better is actually just obeying God, doing exactly what he said, exactly how he said to do it, and exactly when he told you to do it. That's what's most important. So that's the point Samuel is trying to drive drive home for Saul. And because Saul did not follow directions, Samuel summons Agag, the king of the Amalekites, and he chops him up in pieces. He's like, I'm going to do what you didn't do because the Lord wants this man dead. I'll take care of it. In chapter 16, God wastes no time. He's like, look, Samuel, there's going to be a new king. I need you to go to Bethlehem and see Jesse. And if anybody questions you of Saul's people, just so it doesn't look suspect what you're doing, take a cow with you and tell them that you're going to make sacrifices to the Lord. So Samuel obeys. He goes to Bethlehem. He brings the sacrifice with him, and he goes to get Jesse and tells him and all his sons to come with him while they go make sacrifices. And then as Samuel sees all of Jesse's sons, he starts trying to figure out, okay, I think this will probably be the one. And God tells Samuel, look, you see with your human eyes what you see on the outside, their physical appearance, how they look, how tall and strong and handsome they may be. I look at the matters of the heart. So all these ones that you think are the king, that's not it. So Samuel goes on to question Jesse. He says, are these all of your sons? And Jesse says, I actually have a younger son. He's a shepherd. So Samuel says, okay, bring him too. And then God says, that's the one. That's the king. Anoint him. So this horn of oil that Samuel brought with him, he uses that to anoint David as king. So after David has been anointed, now the Spirit of the Lord leaves Saul and comes to David. And now Saul is left with an evil spirit of the Lord. So this evil spirit is tormenting Saul. He can't find any peace. So his servants say, maybe we need a musician to come in here and soothe this evil spirit. And ironically, the person they choose is David, who is also a musician. He plays the harp. And whenever David plays, the evil spirit leaves Saul. So Saul loves David at this point. And now David is assigned to be Saul's armor bearer. Then we get to chapter 17, where we are introduced to a 9-foot tall Philistine named Goliath. So Goliath is tormenting the people of Israel. He's challenging them. He's like, look, let's make a deal. You send me a man that you've chosen to come meet me. And if I beat him, Israel will be servants to the Philistines. But if you, this person that you pick from Israel, if they beat me, the Philistines will be servants to you. And he's tormenting them and challenging them, telling them to send somebody, but everybody's terrified of Goliath. So nobody goes out there, and he torments them with this challenge for 40 days. Meanwhile, David is back in Bethlehem with his father, and his father says, look, go take this food to your brothers, because David's brothers are now fighting in this battle, or they're technically not fighting. They're listening to this proposition that Goliath has made to all the Israelites. So Jesse, David's father, says, take this food down to your brothers, go check on them, make sure they're good. So when David gets there to bring this food to his brothers, he immediately sees Goliath and is like, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that dares to defy the armies of the living God? So David is like upset. He's like, who is this man? Who does he think he is, challenging the living God of Israel? What is his problem? And all the other people in the army are like, man, shh, be quiet. They're all afraid of him. David is like big and bad at this point. He has this confidence in the Lord, and he doesn't understand why everybody's so hesitant. So everybody hears about David's audacious statement and question. So Saul asks for David. So David is like, look, I'll go fight the Philistine. He's asking for a challenge. I'll go do it. And Saul is like, you're just a kid. Like at this point, David is a child. And Saul is like, what are you talking about? And David is like, look, I watch my father's sheep, and a lion and a bear came and took one of the sheep away. I went after them and killed both of them, and I retrieved the sheep for my father. So if the Lord can enable me to overcome a lion and a bear, he certainly can help me overcome Goliath. So Saul is like, oh, okay, that's fine. So Saul gives David his armor, and obviously it's too large for him because David is a child. So David is like, look, keep all that. I got my staff, my sling, and he picked up 5 smooth stones. So he goes out to meet Goliath, and Goliath despises him instantly. And he's probably a little offended because he's like, who is this kid? I'm 9 feet tall. Y'all sent a child out here? And David responds like, look, the God of Israel is going to give you into my hands. So Goliath is like, come on then, let's go. So Goliath comes toward David. David runs toward Goliath. He takes one of the smooth stones. He puts it in his sling and hurls it at Goliath's head. It goes right into his forehead. It sinks in, and Goliath dies. So Goliath falls to the ground. David gets on top of him, takes Goliath's sword, and uses his own sword to chop his head off. So he kills Goliath, and the Philistines are shook. They go running for the hills. And Saul is in awe. He's like, whose son is this? And David is like, I'm the son of Jesse, a Bethlehemite. And at this point, we get into the next chapter, and we see that Saul did not want David to leave anymore. He's like, I need this kid here. He's a musician that soothed me. He can kick Goliath's butt. This man needs to be here with me. So that's the status of David in chapter 18. And at this point, Jonathan, Saul's son, develops a really close relationship with David. Their souls, the scripture says their souls are knit together. So these are like best buddies. And David continues to go on and win battles for Saul and all of Israel. And the women actually make up a song about David. And this is where the jealousy sets in for Saul. So the women are saying Saul slays his thousands, but David, he slays his 10,000s. And Saul is hot. He's like, wait a minute, I'm the king. What are you talking about? So Saul becomes jealous of David from this day forward. He's ready to kill him. So Saul actually tries to kill David twice, but David slips out of his hands. And this is when Saul realizes that he has the Spirit of the Lord on him and that the Spirit of the Lord left Saul. So he realizes this and is even more infuriated. So Saul tries to give David his oldest daughter in marriage, but his oldest daughter is already married to somebody else. Then Saul learns that his younger daughter, Michal, loves David. So he's like, okay, perfect. This is going to be perfect. David is informed that Saul wants him to be his son-in-law. And David is like, I'm a poor man. At this time, culturally, you had to give a dowry. If you were going to marry a woman, you had to pay a dowry to that family. And David is like, I'm a poor man. I can't afford a dowry. And the servants of Saul are like, look, Saul knows that. It's fine. All he wants is the foreskins of 100 Philistines. How sick and ridiculous can Saul get? But he does this because he's like, okay, my daughter loves David. And I can make this look like I really value his strength and his power by giving him this challenge. But really, I expect him to be killed by the Philistines. So David and his men go up and they kill 200 Philistines. So David exceeds the dowry and gets 200 foreskins of the Philistines for Saul. So Saul gives Michal, his daughter, to David, and they get married. And now Saul is even more terrified because he's like, okay, I am positive now that the Lord is with David. I'm shook. Then in the next chapter, we see that Saul is set on killing David. He's like, look, this man has to go. He tells everybody, including his son, I want him dead. You all need to kill him. And Jonathan, because he loves David, this is his friend, he intercedes for him. So Saul calms down after Jonathan intercedes for David, and they're able to be in each other's presence again. Saul is no longer trying to kill David every time he sees him. So there's another battle with the Philistines. David goes to the battle. He conquers these people again. And when he comes back, Saul is back on these old games. He tries to kill David once again. So David goes home to his wife, Michal, and when he gets there, Michal is informed of the plan that Saul wants to kill him. Saul has set up servants that are going to kill David in the morning right outside his house, and Michal knows this. So she tells David, she sneaks him out the window, and then she uses an image and some hair and puts that in the bed in the spot where David would be. So when the servants come to ask her, okay, we need to see David, she's like, oh, he's sick. So the servants go tell Saul, look, he's sick. We couldn't bring him. And Saul is like, bring him in the bed. I'll kill him like that. So the servants come back, and when they get ready to take David in the bed, then they see it's an image and that Michal tricked them. And at this point, David has fled to Ramah to see Samuel. So when he visits Samuel, he tells him everything that's going on, and Saul is notified of David's location. So Saul sends messengers to go retrieve David, and when they get there, the Spirit of the Lord falls upon them, and among all the other prophets, they begin prophesying. So Saul sends another group of messengers, and the same thing happens. When they get there, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon them, and they start prophesying. So Saul is like, look, apparently I got to handle this myself. So Saul goes down there, and the same thing happens. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon him. He starts prophesying. He takes it even further and takes off all his clothes. But we can clearly see that the Lord is protecting David at this point. So in chapter 20, David flees again, and he speaks to Jonathan, and he's like, man, what did I do wrong? Why does your father want to kill me? If there's any iniquity found in me, then Jonathan, you kill me yourself. Don't give me over to him. Kill me yourself if there's something wrong. And Jonathan is like, there's nothing wrong. You didn't do anything bad. You're innocent. My father is just out for blood. So David is like, okay, this is the way that we can determine whether or not there's still bad blood between me and your father. I'm due to be at a feast with your father in a few days. But when I don't show up, you can tell your father that I asked you to go back to my hometown to make sacrifices with my family. Depending on how he responds will let us know if he still wants to kill me or not. So if he becomes angry, then we know for certain he's still out for blood. But if he's calm, then there's a chance all of this is behind us. So Jonathan goes to the feast and David's seat is empty. And at first, Saul thinks, okay, maybe he's unclean and that's the reason he's not here. But the second day of the feast comes around, and when David is still not there, then Saul asks Jonathan, what's up? Where's David at? Jonathan follows the plan and Saul becomes enraged. So Jonathan knows that his father still wants to kill David. And what Saul did not know is that Jonathan and David already made a covenant between themselves, and they even established a way for them to communicate if Saul is still angry with David or not. So the plan was that David will hide behind a rock and Jonathan will go to the field with the little boy and shoot arrows. Depending on how he tells the little boy to fetch the arrow is going to communicate to David whether or not he needs to run away because Saul still wants to kill him, or if he can come back home and Saul has just given up this fight. Because Jonathan knows that David is still in his father's sights, Saul is angry with Jonathan now. And he's like, look, David is gone. You let him get out of my hands. Don't you realize as long as he's alive, you can't be king? So Saul is like, why aren't you on my side? Don't you realize that a natural heir to the throne should be my son, not this random little boy from Bethlehem? But Jonathan already knows in his heart, this is the king that God has chosen. So Jonathan has already knit his soul to David. They're already locked in besties. And Jonathan is ready to be at the service of this new king if that's what it comes down to. So Saul even tries to kill his own son, Jonathan, because of his allegiance to David. So after all of this chaos, Jonathan follows along with the plan. He shoots the arrows in the field with the little boy to let David know that it is not safe for him to come back. After the little boy goes on back home, Jonathan and David have their last conversation, a tearful conversation where they are sad that they have to leave each other, but this is just the way things have to be. Then we get to chapter 21, where David is living life on the run and making up stories to keep himself safe along the way. So he arrives to Nob and he interacts with the priest Ahimelech. So Ahimelech is like, hey man, what you doing here? And David says, look, I'm on an urgent mission sent by the king. I didn't even have time to leave with any weapons or anything. I'm just here doing what I was told to do by the king. And David is like, look, because I left in such a hurry, I'm kind of hungry. Do you have anything I can take? And Ahimelech says, look, all we have is the showbread. And if you remember from talk about the tabernacle in the earlier books that we read, this showbread was only to be eaten by the priests. And David is a king. He's not supposed to eat this bread, but he does because he's on the run and he needs some type of provision. So Ahimelech gives him this bread. And Ahimelech also has Goliath's sword that David used to kill Goliath, to chop off Goliath's head. Ahimelech has that sword. So that sword is given to David and he's given the showbread. The problem is there's a snitch amongst this conversation. So Doeg is nearby and he sees this whole conversation go down. So he's like, okay, mental note, got it. Then we see that David flees to a Philistine area and the people start to recognize him because he got so popular because of the song that the women sang about him. So they're like, hey, isn't that David, the Israelite? And David starts playing crazy. He starts acting like a fool. And because of his behavior, the people are like, nah, that can't be David. So apparently he plays crazy well. Then we get into chapter 22. So as David is in hiding, all the people that are in distress, everybody that's in debt or discontent, they all gather together with David and are essentially in hiding with him. So he gathers about 400 people that want to follow him. And during this time, we also see that David takes his parents to the king of Moab and he asks for protection for his parents while he figures out what the Lord will do for him. And at first this seems strange, but then if you remember, his great grandmother Ruth is a Moabite. So that kind of makes sense. I guess these are like people that he feels close to because he does have some portion of Moabite within him in addition to being an Israelite. Saul later finds out that people have seen David and they know where he is. So he confronts all these people and he's like, is David able to give you vineyards and land? Why are y'all covering for him? I'm the king. I can give you a reward if you help me. So then Doeg comes out of the woodworks because remember he saw that conversation David was having with Ahimelech. So Doeg is like, look, I know where he is. I know what happened. I was there when he had the conversation with Ahimelech. So at this point, Saul summons Ahimelech and Ahimelech is like, I didn't know any conflict was happening between the two of you. All I know is that David is your son-in-law and he said he was on an assignment sent by you. I didn't know y'all had anything going on, so I technically didn't do anything wrong. And Saul is like, quiet with all that, you're dead. So Saul orders the footmen to do his dirty work for him. He wants Ahimelech dead, but he won't do it himself. He tells the footmen to do it. And the footmen realize how important a priest is in Israel. So they're like, I'm not killing a priest. I don't want no parts of that drama. So Doeg does it. He kills Ahimelech and 85 priests. And within the city of the priests, Doeg also kills all the men, women, and children. The only person that survived was Ahimelech's son, Abiathar. So Abiathar goes to David. He tells him what happened. And David is like, look, you can stay here with me. Don't worry about anything. In chapter 23, David is informed about what's going on with the Philistines in Keilah, and the people are like, okay, David, you got to go handle this. But David consults the Lord first. He's like, I don't care what y'all talking about. He consults God. So he's actually trying to be obedient. He consults God. God says, yes, you can go down there. So David prepares all his men to go. And they're like, look, we're afraid here in Judah. Don't you think it's going to be worse in Keilah? And as we read a little bit more, we kind of see perhaps why they could have been afraid. Because his people are so fearful, David consults God again. He's like, okay, do you want us to go to Keilah? And God says, go, I have delivered them into your hand. So David goes down, he conquers the Philistines, and Saul learns of David's location. And he's like, perfect, they're trapped. They're in a city that has gates. That could be a part of the reason why David's men were scared, because being in a fortified city, you're kind of like blocked in. So they may have been concerned that they were like shooting fish in a barrel for Saul. So they're like, you sure you want us to go down there? Saul is like, perfect, they've been delivered into my hands. They're trapped. So David, once again, he seeks counsel from God. He tells Abiathar to bring the ephod and ask God if Saul is going to come after me, and will these people give me into Saul's hands if he gets here? And the answer to both of those questions is yes, Saul is coming, and if you stay here, these people will give you over to Saul. So David and his men get up and get out. 600 men come with him and they flee. And David meets up with Jonathan, and Jonathan encourages David in the Lord, the best kind of friend to have. And just as Saul gets close to where David is, he hears word that the Philistines are in his land. So he has to go back to his place and handle that situation. Then in chapter 24, it looks like David could have ended all this conflict right here. So in chapter 24, I think the funny thing is the little details that we get. So chapter 24 in verse 3, it says that Saul went in to cover his feet, aka nature was calling. He needed to take a number 2. And David just stumbles upon him with his men. And it looks like the perfect scenario to be like, oh my gosh, I could kill Saul and all of this could be over. And that's what David's men say. They're like, look, kill him. He's right here. So all David does is cut off a little piece of the skirt of his robe. And as soon as he does that, he immediately feels convicted, because he's like, even though this man wants to kill me, this is still the Lord's anointed, meaning this is still a king that God allowed to be in this position of power. And I think that kind of speaks volumes to us. Whenever we have political leaders, people in positions of power, we have to realize that even if we vote in our country, the Lord is the one that put them in that position of power. God anointed that person for that specific role. So even if they're wicked, as long as they're not telling us to do things that contradict the Bible, and they're not specifically coming into my house and saying, stop reading the Bible, stop going to church, you better not pray to that God of yours, as long as they're not directly telling us to do things that are contradictory to the word of God, we still have to show some level of respect and honor to them, because God put them in that position of power. We didn't do that. Man didn't do that. God did that. So after this conviction, David comes before Saul and he's like, look, man, there's no wickedness in my heart towards you. So he's pretty much saying, like, if there's still beef with us from this day forward, I'm just letting you know it's one-sided. I have no issue with you at all. And immediately Saul starts crying and feeling bad. Saul is like, I know now for sure you're a better man than me. So he's like, when you take this reign as king, please do not cut off my seed, and please don't destroy my father's name. And David agrees. He's like, look, there's no problems here. I have no issue with that. So Saul goes about his way. Then in chapter 25, Samuel dies, and then we're introduced to an intelligent and beautiful woman named Abigail and her evil, disgusting husband, Nabal. So David sends message to Nabal, and he says, look, when your shepherds were among my people, we did nothing to harm them. So because of that, please allow us to find favor in your sight, and whatever you have that you can give us, please share it with us. And Nabal sends a message back like, look, I don't know nobody named David. That name don't mean nothing to me. That's none of my business. I don't care what you're talking about. So David is ready to box now. David is ready for war. He's like, he said, what? Oh no, we ready to go up in battle. So one of David's men tell Abigail, like, look, it's about to be a problem. David is coming for your husband because he got a smart mouth. So David is coming for him, and Abigail hurries up and pretty much covers for her husband without him knowing. So she prepares all this provision for David and his men, and she apologizes on behalf of her disrespectful and evil husband, and she begs for forgiveness. And David ends up thanking her and says, "Thank you for not allowing me to shed innocent blood. That could have been bad." So Abigail goes back home, and Nabal has no care in the world. He don't even know what's going on. That man drunk as a skunk. So the next day after he sobered up, Abigail tells him everything that happened. And 10 days later, the Lord smote him. Nabal dies. And then we see that David takes Abigail as his wife. So even David, the man after God's own heart, disobeyed God's law, which specifically told kings you are not to multiply wives. But David is multiplying wives. In chapter 26, Saul starts pursuing David once again, and once again Saul is given into David's hands. He catches Saul and all his men knocked out. And David does not kill Saul, and he even talks Abishai out of killing Saul. So instead of killing them, he takes Saul's spear and his cruse of water. He once again pleads for his life, telling Saul, "Look, I'm not an enemy of yours. I don't have any issue with you. Please stop trying to kill me." And once again, Saul repents, and then they go their separate ways. In chapter 27, even though Saul just repented, David is like, "Look, at this point, I know Saul is still about to try to kill me, but maybe he won't pursue me if I go into the land of the Philistines." So David goes to the king of Gath, Achish. David asks Achish for land outside of the royal territory. So Achish gives David and all of his men the land of Ziklag, and they stay there for 16 months. David goes on to kill enemy nations, destroying everything, killing all their men, women, children, cattle, all of these things. But Achish asks David, "Hey man, what you been doing? Like, what you been up to?" And he learns that David has come back with spoils from land south of Judah. And when he hears this, because Judah is Israel's territory, now the king thinks that he's converted David, and now he has a secret double agent on his side. And he's like, "Oh, this is an Israelite, but he's doing my dirty work, killing Israelites. This about to be my boy right here." So he thinks he has a best friend in David at this point. Then in chapter 28, Achish and the rest of the Philistines are ready to go up to battle against the Israelites. So because the king thinks he got him one in David, he's like, "David, please come with us in this battle." And David is ready to go. Saul is terrified. But after the death of Samuel, he banned all the people that engaged in witchcraft and familiar spirits. So because he tried to seek God and God would not respond to him, he was like, "Man, I need to find one of these people that I actually banned." So he sends his people out to find somebody. And once they find someone, he puts on a disguise, he seeks out this woman, and he says, "Look, I need help." He specifically asks to speak to Samuel. And once Samuel comes up, the woman realizes, "You're Saul. You're the one that banned people like me." And he's like, "Look, chill. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to hurt you." And once Samuel comes up, he's completely irritated. He's like, "Saul, why are you disturbing me? I am in peace. What is wrong with you?" So Saul is like, "Look, I can't hear from God. I have a problem and I need to talk to him, but he's not answering me." Samuel says, "Fine. Look, you are the enemy of God. God has taken your kingdom and given it to David. The Philistines are going to defeat the Israelites. You're done." Then in chapter 29, as the Philistines are going up against Israel with David and his men as well, the princes of the Philistines are like, "Look, we don't trust David. At any point, he could be an enemy for us. He could be our adversary." And at first, Achish is defending him. He's like, "Look, he's on our side." And they're like, "We don't trust it." So Achish is like, "Fine, David, you and your men can go on back." Then in chapter 30, when David and his men get back, they see that Ziklag has been burned and captives have been taken. So the Amalekites were trying to get their get back. So they come, burn down their land, and take all the women captive, including David's 2 wives. So the people are ready to fight with David. They are upset. The men are like, "They destroyed our land. They took our women captive." They're ready to turn on David. But David once again consults the wisdom of the Lord. So the Lord tells David, "Yes, you can go pursue them." And out of the 600 men that were with David, only 400 were able to go with him. So the 400 are on their way to get the Amalekites, and they run into an Egyptian who just so happens to be a servant of an Amalekite. So David is like, "Man, do you know where the Amalekites are?" And he's like, "I will take you there." So when they arrive, David kills all the Amalekites except for 400 men that got away. He's able to rescue his wives and all the captives that were taken. Everything has been restored to them. So when they're headed back, David is like, "Okay, we got to give this spoil to all the people." And at first, the 400 men that went with David are like, "Why are we giving anything to the 200 that did not come?" And David is like, "Nah, we're not doing that. Whenever we get spoils, we are going to share equally with everybody to restore everybody back to how they were before this even happened." So David sends spoils and presents to the elders and his friends throughout the land. Then in chapter 1, back to the battle with Israel and the Philistines, the battle that David was not allowed to come on, we see that the Philistines, they end up getting the best of Saul and killing all of his sons, including David's bestie, Jonathan. So Saul is wounded. He tells his armor bearer, please kill me. Do not let the Philistines take me, torture me, and do all of that. Please don't let that happen. Please kill me. And his armor bearer is like, I can't do it. So Saul has to kill himself, and after that, his armor bearer kills himself. Once everybody's dead, the Philistines overtake that land. They find Saul's body, they chop his head off, and then his body and the bodies of his sons are posted on a wall. The men of Jabesh Gilead learn what happened to Saul's body and the bodies of his sons. So at night they sneak in, they take their bodies down and burn them, and then bury their bones under a tree in Jabesh. Then we move into 2 Samuel chapter 1. So David learns of the news of Saul's death by an Amalekite who thought he was coming to lie and get some clout. So he comes and tells David everything that happened, and included in that story is a complete lie that he made up. And he says, look, I found Saul. He was wounded and he begged me to kill him because he did not want the Philistines to capture him and torture him. So I did him that favor, man. I killed him because he asked me to, and I didn't want to let him get captured by the Philistines. So this Amalekite is thinking, I'll probably get clout for this, because everybody clearly knew that Saul was beefing with David. So he thinks that he's going to get some clout, some pats on the back, because David is going to be the new king now. So he's like, look, I killed your predecessor. I got that enemy out the way for you. Go me. He was sadly mistaken. So David mourns the death of Saul and Jonathan. He even writes a lamentation that we're able to see, where he writes about Saul and Jonathan and how their deaths impacted him. But then David goes and questions the Amalekite. He's like, you didn't have any hesitation killing God's anointed? And then David orders that man to be killed. So he thought he was about to get a pat on the back, a reward, something, and he loses his life just because he wanted to lie. Then in chapter 2, David asks God if he should go up to any of the cities of Judah, and God says, yes, go to Hebron, and there is where David is anointed king. David then blesses the men of Jabesh Gilead for how they treated Saul and his son's bodies after death. He appreciated what they did. And then we see Abner takes Ishbosheth, Saul's son, and anoints him to be king. So he is king of Israel and David is king of Judah. So now there's a battle between different parts of Israel. So Israel as a whole versus Judah, a small portion of Israel. The two of them are battling. So Abner is in charge of Israel's army and Joab is in charge of Judah's army. Joab has siblings, and one of his siblings, Asahel, is pursuing after Abner. And Abner knows that this is Joab's brother. So as Asahel is pursuing him, he's like, look, man, you better get off my tail. Leave me alone. I don't want to have to kill you. I don't want to have to kill you. But he keeps pursuing him. So Abner ends up killing Asahel, Joab's brother. Joab and his other brother, Abishai, found out what Abner did. So then they start pursuing after him because they want him dead for what happened to their brother. At this point, Abner is like, look, man, do we have to keep going back and forth like this? This is crazy. So Joab and Abner call a truce and things are left alone at that point. In chapter 3, we see that the battle continues between the house of Saul and the house of David. As the battles go on, the house of David gets stronger. The house of Saul becomes weaker and weaker. And in the midst of all this time of battle, we see that David goes on to have children with all of his various wives. And then Ishbosheth gets a little beside himself and he accuses Abner, the captain of the army, he accuses Abner of sleeping with Saul's concubines. Abner is highly upset. He's like, how can you even ask me something like that? So because Abner is so offended, he's like, look, I'm going to David's side because you tripping over here. And when Abner comes to David, David is like, look, I don't want to hear anything you say unless you bring me my wife, Michal. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say out your mouth. So Abner goes and gets Michal and has her brought to David. And unfortunately, by this point, Michal had been remarried. So her poor husband is coming behind her the whole way she's being taken to David. He is crying his eyes out. That poor man did not sign up for that. So Abner pretty much goes on a campaign for David, saying that he needs to be the king over all of Israel, not just Judah. Then we find out that Joab learns about David having these interactions with Abner, and he is still upset about his brother's death. So unbeknownst to David, he gets men to bring Abner to him, and he kills Abner. David learns about this, and he curses Joab and all of his family for generations. And then David mourns for Abner. So that's 1 Samuel chapter 13 through 2 Samuel chapter 3. Lord willing, I'll see you all next week. Grace and peace.